Seasonally appropriate reviews continue. Castlevania Nocturne. Quick reminder, if you are new around here, I love the Netflix Castlevania series. Season 2 was the best, but the whole thing is really good. It is fantastically paced, amazing characters, looks great, the action is phenomenal. It's just good. I was excited and nervous for this. Excited because I liked the previous Castlevania. Nervous not only because the previous one had kind of closed out its story, but nervous because it's not being handled by the same head writer. So I'm going to address this relatively quickly. All 4 seasons of the previous show were written by Warren Ellis, and his writing was of very high quality. I'm wording it that way because I'm trying to avoid directly praising him as an individual because I don't think this is necessarily the reason he isn't writing. This was always planned as a spinoff with a different head writer, but Warren Ellis turned out to just have a lot of issues, a lot of Me Too type issues, and while unfortunately there was a time where it looked like he might have actually been taking the steps and could have served potentially as a template for how someone actually striving to change and do better would behave, that does not appear to have held through, and in the last year it's not looking like he's actually headed in the direction he needs to be. That said, he's at least kept his head down and his mouth shut for the most part, which is more than a lot of them do, but I gotta leave it at that. Regardless, his writing did a lot to elevate that show. And coming into a Castlevania show without his writing had me nervous. It just did. And while I don't think the writing is particularly at issue, this is not quite landing right. Now, I'm trying to be fair to this thing because admittedly the first season of the original show wasn't great. Although in that case it was not great because it was so damn short. It felt like a prologue more than anything else. This is a proper season, but there's some issues. There's some issues here. And to be fair, they are issues that many of which stand in comparison to the original. And a lot of the complaints I'm going to have are going to be in comparison. I think it's fair to compare. It's a spin-off / continuation of the original. The comparison is warranted. But, like, if this had been the start of the Castlevania series, if we didn't have the previous 4 seasons of stuff, I'd probably think better of it. I wouldn't like it as much as I liked that, I don't think, but it suffers from the comparison. It just does. So I guess I'll get the big problem out of the way. Richter Belmont. He's annoying. He works well in action scenes, but pretty much everybody does, so he's not special for that. I feel like the problem with him is they gave him a very similar character demeanor to Trevor Belmont from the previous series. And maybe they're just trying to make this like the Belmont thing, this kind of bitter, negative, kind of cynical thing. Except the difference is, I don't know how old Trevor was supposed to be in Castlevania. He felt like he was in his 40s, 30s at the most. Richter feels like he's barely in his 20s at best. And that kind of jaded, I'm going to point out the problems with everything attitude, it plays different at different ages. When it comes to Trevor, it feels like an organic result of the fact that life has kicked him around, not just like at some point, but has been doing so for decades. Whereas with somebody in their early 20s, which again is how Richter comes across, regardless of what his actual canonical age is supposed to be, it comes across as just whiny edgelord stuff. And yes, I understand what Richter's been through. I understand he has every right to be traumatized. This isn't about trauma. This is about who the hell would want to hang out with somebody this freaking negative. And again, The other show did it better because nobody really wanted to hang out with Trevor. They were kind of stuck with him because he had the skills that were needed. And then he eased up and lightened up over time. So he got to have an arc. Here, Richter's got a surrogate family already, and I'm just left thinking, why is anybody putting up with it? Why does anyone want to spend time with him? It doesn't help that, like, the other characters are way more interesting. Annette and Edouard, especially, are way better characters than Richter is. I would happily scrap him from the show and give me more time with the two of them, because they are great. They're fantastic. Richter is whiny as heck. He gets a little better in the tail end because he kind of gets like boosted a little bit. And so, like, okay, that's better, but I didn't care for his presence. I didn't like him. And unfortunately, the villains are a little lacking. They don't feel as personality driven as they did before. Our big bad right now is this supposed vampire messiah voiced by Franca Potente, and I like her. I've liked her since Run Lola Run, so I've liked her for a long damn time. And she's just underutilized here. Like, it's a character that everyone talks about being a threat or dangerous or powerful, and we don't see her do much. So she's not holding a candle to Dracula or even the subsequent villains of the later seasons. So that's not working fantastically. You have... okay, so this one hurts to say. So Orlox is a vampire from Richter's history, and, like, narratively it's fine. And the thing is, the actor who's voicing Orlox, Zan McLaren, I think is phenomenal. I've loved him so much in other stuff. He was one of the highlights of the second season of Fargo. He was the highlight of the second season of Westworld. He's really good. His vocal performance is not good in this. And I think what the issue is I don't know if he's done voice work elsewhere. I didn't really check, but his performance is very flat. And thinking back on the fantastic performances he gave in other things, he is a very physical actor. I don't mean like he's moving all over the place. I mean, he puts his full body into the performance. What sells his performances is seeing him, seeing what's going on in the face. He uses everything at his disposal, and it really feels like when it's narrowed down to just the voice, he's not compensating for the fact that the other tools he normally has when he's in front of a camera just aren't there. He hasn't compensated for that, and so his voice in isolation doesn't sell a performance the way I know he as an actor absolutely can. And it sucks because he's so good in other stuff. When I looked up who the voice was, my heart sank because this guy's so good. But not here. And again, I don't know if he's done voice work elsewhere, but it certainly doesn't sound like he has. He sounds very out of his element, trying to do just vocal work. So that doesn't help, especially because as far as the writing goes, he's one of the more interesting villains. So that was a bit of a letdown as well. I haven't rewatched Castlevania in a little bit. I feel like the visual quality has dropped a little. Not massively and not across the board, but like you can tell what scenes had more time and money put into them in terms of like really getting the atmospheric lighting, or, you know, a lot of it's the action scenes. But then there's other scenes that are just like dialogue scenes or intermediary scenes. And the colors are so flat and the characters pop out from the background because like they're lit too brightly. And it just looks bad. And like everybody's on model, so that's not the problem, but like it just looks unfinished. It looks like there was supposed to be another pass, like for shadows or something. It just hasn't happened for some of these scenes. I don't know if this was done at a reduced budget from the original. but it looks like it was. Now, again, that's not across the board. Some of it, a lot of it even, still looks good. Oh, and the designs for the night creatures so far this season are phenomenal. Those are great. Love that. I haven't really talked too much about the story. As I said, Richter's just a pain in the butt. I don't really like him. I like the general notion of vampires as aristocracy. Like, I just do. And if you're gonna pick a setting for Down with the Aristocracy, French Revolution's a pretty decent one to do it with. That's a natural enough pairing. They seem really inconsistent about how tough the vampires are. And that might be partly to do with the fact that I'd have to go back and check. I feel like there's more action scenes in this than there was in the first season of Castlevania. The first season of Castlevania was really about atmosphere setting. And even the second season, it felt like there'd be a couple of episodes of buildup before we got a real good action scene. This one has one almost every episode. And again, they're pretty good, but it feels like there's less importance and less weight and less catharsis in each one. Some of the action scenes in Castlevania, especially towards the end of the second season, I was pumping my fist in the air. They were so cathartic. This one, I felt like I should be feeling that way as we got to the climax of the season, but I wasn't, because there'd been so many action scenes that the story didn't really need, that it had kind of diluted the impact a little bit. Again, I don't know if I'm being overly critical on this, because it's distinctly possible, since I have not rewatched the first Castlevania in a while, especially not like the first season, it's distinctly possible that these are issues that exist, at least in part, in the original Castlevania, and I've just forgotten or glossed over them. But they're what's jumping out at me. And at least to my memory of Castlevania, overall, it is good, but it's a little worse, kind of across the board. I'll still come back for another season. As I said, there is good stuff here. Annette and Edouard, yes, all the way yes. The Abbot is okay. There could be some interesting story stuff with him and everything going on there. We'll see. The villains aren't doing a ton for me yet, but there's time. It has been officially renewed for a second season, by the by. So, we'll see if we can pick it up again, but mildly disappointed. I think that's where I'm at. It's not bad. It's good even. But Castlevania was great. So moving to just good still feels like a step down. Ah, well. Castlevania Nocturne, what'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. Enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. Time to thank some Patreon backers, and in the spirit of October, I'd like to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Goddess Alita, Turok, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernobulax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, and Rosalind Bennett. Thank you for your assistance. I don't know, I might try theming the shoutouts in the future. I don't know, we'll see. Thank you.